Signing a buyer-broker agreement is nothing to fear, but it is definitely something you need to understand. Presumably, you took the time to find, vet, and choose your agent to get their undivided attention. So why do these agreements feel so overwhelming? And why is that agreement just a big wall of words? Go back to my previous video, the Buyer-Broker Agreement Essentials, if you want the full backstory on why you're even being asked to sign a representation agreement. The short answer about that wall of words is that buyer-broker agreements are written by brokers to protect brokers, not consumers. Let that sink in for a minute. I'm here to tell you that you don't have to agree to all those extras that protect the broker and not you. So let's meet the core five. These core five clauses are geographic scope, duration, agency relationship, compensation, and cancellation. Nail these five clauses and you've got everything you need in the contract for you to have a productive relationship with your agent. Let's look at each. Number one, geographic scope. This clause defines where your agent represents you. Too often, buyers sign agreements that cover a whole state or an entire county when the buyer is really shopping in very specific neighborhoods. How does this happen? Because that's what the agent puts in the agreement and buyers simply sign the agreement. Why does geographic scope matter? Because you want an agent with hyper-local experience in the specific area where you're shopping. That is the agent who understands the trends in that market and where to find the deals. That agent will also understand other details about the area that might matter to you, such as school districts, or vets, or grocery stores, or other important lifestyle considerations. Also, if you buy in the defined area with another agent, your first broker can still claim a commission because they have a signed contract with you for that area. So keep it specific and keep it local. I'm not saying to get so overly specific that you need a new contract every time you switch neighborhoods, but I am saying to be mindful about the geographic area that you allow into that representation agreement. Let's talk about the duration clause. This clause sets how long the agreement lasts. 6 months? Maybe this is too long for a new relationship. You decide. Maybe start with 30 to 60 days. That gives both sides long enough to prove value and adjust if the relationship is not a fit. Why does this matter? Often, a shorter term forces communication and performance. On the other hand, if you went to the trouble to find and vet the perfect agent for you and your goals, it might be a good idea for you to get that person locked in for a longer time to keep them focused on your happy ending. If your agent insists on locking you in to 6 months without ever having even met, that's a red flag. Next up is agency relationships. This topic can be a little bit complicated, and I'm going to try and distill it to its lowest common denominator. But this clause has to do with the loyalty that you can expect from your agent. You want exclusive buyer agency. That means fiduciary duty, and it means your agent is legally bound to put your interests first. Transaction broker or dual agency, those dilute loyalty. In plain English, a transaction broker simply fills out paperwork for you, but they're not obligated to fight for you. A dual agent cannot zealously represent you and your interests to the exclusion of the seller to whom he or she owes the exact same duty. Why does this matter? You deserve somebody looking out for you and only you and fighting for your best interests. You can certainly ask for a non-exclusive agency agreement, and this would mean that you could sign a similar agreement with other agents. But if you're not committed to your agent, why would your agent commit to you? Core clause number 4. Compensation. This particular clause is required under the new homebuyer rules and is required to be very specific. It cannot say something open-ended like a broker to be compensated whatever seller will pay. The fee must be stated as a percentage of the sale or as a flat fee. Notably, your agent cannot earn any more from any party than what is stated in this agreement. This is part of these home buyer rules. There is no option to negotiate away anything that I've just stated about compensation. It would also be a good idea to write into this clause that you need the seller to accept a term in the offer agreeing to pay for your agent if that is in fact the situation. You don't have to write this into your representation agreement, and you are thereafter free to reject any counteroffer from the seller that counters out that term in your offer. But your agent needs to know what your situation is in any event, and you would have to remember to make sure the term is in the offer later when you're making offers. Your best strategy is to put this in the representation agreement and put the onus on your agent to make sure there is a term in the offer that requires the seller to pay for the buyer agent. Why does this matter? If you forget to add a term to your offer requiring the seller to pay for your agent and the seller simply accepts your offer, you are contractually on the hook to pay your agent and their broker yourself, no matter what the state of your funds are. This can get very messy at escrow closing time if you don't have the funds. And poorly managing this situation can result in you losing the property and your deposit. Clause number 5, the cancellation or termination clause. This is your flexibility clause. The clause explains how you can end your agreement and when. Look for any phrase requiring mutual agreement or adding fees even though no purchase occurs. Ethical agents want a clean termination clause also. Nobody wants to trap a client who doesn't want to be in a deal, at least when you're working with ethical agents. Why does this clause matter? Everything is rainbows and unicorns at the beginning of your relationship with your agent when you sign the representation agreement. Just like with a marriage or a business partnership, you have to think ahead to the what ifs and structure your formal relationship accordingly. I'm not saying you should obsess over an untimely end to the relationship with your agent, but I am saying don't agree to a term that says the broker has to agree to you terminating the agreement. You simply might have a problem getting the broker to agree, and you don't want to be stuck owing an unreasonable amount of money because you've pulled out of the agreement without consummating a deal. A clear exit keeps the relationship professional and pressure-free. So why are these 5 enough for an agreement? I contend that these are the 5 clauses that protect you and they're sufficient enough to protect the broker. It's okay if your agent can articulate a valid reason for leaving those paragraphs in the agreement, but be aware of those extra clauses and push back on them. If your agent cannot articulate a logical reason to leave those clauses in, that's a red flag. When the core 5 are right, the rest of the contract simply becomes background noise that you decide whether you want it in or out. You don't need it. Clarity protects both sides. The core 5 deliver that clarity. If you'd like to apply the principles that I've talked about in this video to your own representation agreement, I invite you to grab my Agency Agreement Core 5 Fast Action Workbook. The workbook walks you clause by clause through the Core 5 with fill-in worksheets and red flag logs, so you can review what your contract says before you sign. Also included are conversation starting questions to jumpstart negotiations with your agent on the clauses that you want changed. This workbook is available in my Learning Center. The link is on your screen and in the pinned comment, or use the QR code on your screen right now. So have you heard about Zillow touring agreements? Might these pre-formatted lightweight agreements save you the heartburn of negotiating a buyer-broker agreement? I answer that very question in the video on your screen, and my answer might surprise you.